welcome to this unexpected video. I wasn't going to do a video for release today, it'll be, but I felt I had to comment once again, like I did 2 years ago, on the Felipe Massa case. Can't call it a court case yet, really, because it's only had a hearing so far, hasn't it? But yes, normally I would only release a video on a Monday if I was talking about a Grand Prix the previous day. But today I thought I would do sort of one of my in the news videos, F1 in the news videos, basically. But it's only about this one thing, Felipe Massa. What on earth is he up to? I can only assume that some very greedy lawyers have managed to convince Felipe that he has a case. We first heard about this 2 years ago. I can't believe it was as long as 2 years ago, but yeah, that's when we first heard that Massa was looking into this. So has he spent the last 2 years building up a case? And now we have this hearing. Just make sure I am in focus. I think, oh, don't jog it like that. You mustn't jog it like that. That's too... Be more careful, be more careful. Be mindful of the force, the living force in my hand, knocking the camera. Right. Yeah, so, dearie me, he spent the last 2 years building up to this hearing. We've just had the hearing to see, to give a judgment on whether or not there is going to be a court case. And we haven't heard the result of the hearing yet. At least we haven't, the media have not yet. Now, Felipe Massa seems to be wanting to sue the FOM, Formula One management, as well as the FIA and Bernie Ecclestone for £64 million due to loss of earnings from being world champion and sponsorship and all that. Actually, 64 seems like a very small amount when you consider that's supposed to make up for not being world champion for the last 17 years. Now that's £64 million. I assume that must be a round figure in maybe Brazilian reals or US dollars or something, but it's an odd figure when it's converted into pounds, £64 million. It's not entirely clear from what I've seen online as to whether or not he's definitely seeking a cancellation, basically, of the 2008 Formula One World Championship result. I think he is. I think he's going for £64 million, and he wants the FIA to admit, to acknowledge that they broke their own rules by not reversing or making him champion, basically, over Lewis Hamilton. When they found out later in 2008, according to Bernie Ecclestone, that Crashgate had happened. So if he wants them to pretty much acknowledge that, I assume he's trying to get the actual result overturned as well. That's certainly the headline. Certainly the headline has been all along that he's trying to get the result changed. But when you actually read into it, all the talk is about £64 million. But I assume he is trying to get it overturned as well. Either way, it's totally ridiculous, regardless of whether he's going for 64 million compensation or if he's actually wanting the result to be overturned. Now, the very strange thing is that he's going after Bernie Ecclestone as well as the FIA and the FOM. He's going after Bernie Ecclestone, who was head of F1 at the time. He's going after Bernie because 2 years ago there was a whistleblower called Bernie Ecclestone who revealed, as far as we're aware from watching on looking online, whether or not he did, I don't know, can't say for certain, but the reports 2 years ago were that Bernie Ecclestone had suggested that Bernie Ecclestone and other members of the ruling bodies of Formula One were aware of Crashgate in 2008, in the same year as Crashgate, but didn't do anything about it. And now, if indeed that was true, what we heard 2 years ago, it seems to be, because they're still saying it now, and Bernie Ecclestone, I can't see anywhere him denying that he said that. He suggested that the powers that be knew about it in 2008, including himself, and he was the power, he was the one at the top. Not in the FIA, but in the Formula One, he was the one at the top. So what I don't understand why he would do that when he must have known that if anything came from that, it would be aimed at him. So, you know, weirdly, he was the whistleblower and he's also the defendant as well. It's very strange, but Bernie Ecclestone is very strange. He's also about 104, so he's probably not all that fussed about what's going to happen. He's just sort of like shooting from the hip, you know, having a laugh. Anyway, it's all a load of nonsense. It's time wasting. Now, even though I think it's all a load of nonsense and should never go to court, I also think that the two main lines of defence from Ecclestone, FOM and FIA, are also not particularly good ones, especially the one where they are saying that Massa made plenty of his own mistakes in the Singapore Grand Prix and that's why he didn't score any points. Well, from what I remember, I haven't seen the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix since 2008, but from what I remember, the only mistake he really made was driving down the pit lane after his pit stop with half of the pit crew still attached. It looked like someone in the Ferrari had just got married. And there were loads of tin cans trailing along behind the Ferrari. And on a serious note, he hit a mechanic as well. Everyone else was having to jump out of the way. Now, that's the only mistake I remember Massa making. Now, Massa is saying, or his lawyers are saying, or whatever, that pit stop was chaotic because it was an unscheduled pit stop due to the change in strategy because of Nelson Piquet's crash. I should have mentioned the background before this video, of course, shouldn't I? It's to do with Nelson Piquet Jr.'s deliberate crash in order to allow his teammate to win the race, which he did. Timing that accident at just the right time for Nelson Piquet Jr. allowed the team to know exactly the best time to pit Alonso. It's basically like getting someone to peek over the shoulder of a player that's playing you at poker or something, and then they come back and tell you what cards they've got, then you know exactly what to do. So now Alonso apparently didn't know anything about that, and I accept he probably didn't, because they would want to keep as few people knowing about it as possible. But obviously Piquet knew about it because he was doing the deliberate crash. Anyway, so Massa is using that defence, and he can pretty well win that. I think he can say, well, yeah, it's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it, to suggest that the whole pit stop was ruined simply because it was a last-minute thing. But he can at least use that against what the defendants are saying. He can say, well, look, the only mistake that was made was in the pit, and that was because of the unscheduled pit stop. Is a bit of a weak defence to what the defendants are accusing Massa of. Yes, but he can still say that. He can sort of wiggle out of it and say that's why Ferrari messed up the pit stop. And the other thing that the defendants are saying is that too long a period has passed. Well, yes, 17 years is too long a period, but that's not the main point. The main point is that even later in the year, say the end of 2008, even if it had come up then, it would have still been too late. And the reason is cause and effect. That's what the defendants should be saying. Forget about all this other stuff about, oh, Massa, you made other mistakes in the race, and this, that, and the other. Just say cause and effect, the law of causation, okay? Because this is totally different to Abu Dhabi 2021, because that happened, that horrific thing happened on the last lap of the last race. So there was no cause and effect after that, okay? It was like the last act of the whole championship. This Singapore Grand Prix was in the middle of the championship. Now, had Massa taken 10 points for a win in that race instead of the 0 points, then that cause would have had an effect. And that is, Lewis Hamilton would have driven differently, might have taken more risks. Now, more risks are not necessarily a bad thing. Instead of, say, settling for third or fourth, I can't remember what the results were in the rest of the year, but instead of settling for a lower place, he might have pushed for a win or a second place, and may well have got it. Yes, he might have crashed out, but he may well have got it. The point is, that change in points for Massa would have made Hamilton act differently for the rest of the year, and he may well have won by a bigger margin in the end than just 1 point, even though he would have lost 10 points to Massa through the Singapore Grand Prix, where I think Hamilton was third, wasn't he? Rosberg, I think, was second. I think Hamilton was third. So, and of course it should be remembered that Hamilton was caught up in all of that as well, all of that mess. But anyway, with that Grand Prix. So, cause and effect, Felipe, is a bit like the old a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world, and on the other side of the world a giant tsunami hits a shoreline or something. It's that old saying, that old adage, cause and effect. I just don't understand why the FIA, the FOM and Bernie Ecclestone are not saying those two simple words, cause and effect. You cannot say, Massa is saying he would have been champion. So he's saying, if I'd got those 10 points from Singapore, but he's retrospectively looking at what the championship results were at the end of a championship where he didn't score points in Singapore. We don't know what points Hamilton and Massa would have had he scored points in Singapore, specifically 10 points. We have no idea. Look at Lando Norris, right? He has that retirement in Zandvoort this year, and he's been on fire ever since. Had he not had that retirement, he might not have been quite so good, basically, in the last two races in particular. The dominant performance in Mexico may well not have happened had he not had the retirement in Zandvoort. He may well have thought, the championship's gone, I can't win it. It's just, this is ridiculous, I'm just going to give up. And when you give up, you end up doing the opposite and driving with carefree abandonment. So he may well not have dominated in Mexico had he not had the retirement and also the lackluster performance in Azerbaijan, when he didn't take advantage of his teammates' terrible weekend. So those two results in Azerbaijan and Zandvoort may well, we don't know, but they may well have led to the Mexico dominance. Same thing here. You just don't know what Hamilton would have done had he lost those 10 points to Massa in Singapore. Who knows what Hamilton would have done? That might have fired him up massively, or he might have thrown caution to the wind. I can't remember exactly what the championship positions were after Singapore, but cause and effect. It's so simplistic and incorrect for Massa to say he would have been world champion if they had adjusted those results at the end of the season. At the end of 2008, if they had taken adjusted the Singapore Grand Prix result, and then Massa would say, there you go, I'm champion now. Nope, doesn't work like that, I'm afraid. Cause and effect. Totally different to Abu Dhabi 2021, because there was nothing after that last lap. That was it. So that result couldn't affect any other races. Anyway, I just thought I would have my little say there. And please comment. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please comment on what I'm saying. whether you agree or disagree. I'm happy to receive all comments. And if you like the video as well, tick that. If you don't subscribe, please subscribe, because I do all sorts of videos for all sorts of things, mostly Formula 1, but Star Wars and lots of other things as well. And it's all ASMR, but there are some pure ASMR videos in there as well. Anyway, and if you'd like to leave a tip on the thanks button, although this video hasn't been particularly special, I admit. So, thank you for watching and thank you for listening. And remember, Felipe Massa, cause and effect. You cannot say you would have been world champion if you'd got 10 points in Singapore. Maybe you would have, but you can't say I would have been champion. Anyway, I don't think he's going to watch this anyway. Right, thank you, and goodbye for now.